Welcome to Evil Unmasked, where the shadows of history reveal their darkest secrets. I'm your host, Sierra Elizabeth. As a criminal justice and criminology graduate, I've always been drawn to the mysteries that lurk beneath the surface of everyday life. This podcast is dedicated to uncovering and discussing the truth behind some of the most chilling and intriguing cases in true crime history. In each episode, we'll deep dive into a different case, exploring the evidence, unraveling the clues, and bringing you the stories of the victims and the relentless pursuit of justice. From infamous serial killers to unsolved mysteries, no case is too complex or too obscure for me to tackle. In this episode, we'll be exploring the chilling tale of a man who became infamously known as the Acid Bath Murderer. Join me as we dive into John George Haigh's twisted psyche, explore the meticulous methods he used to lure his victims, and uncover how the police finally brought him to justice despite his attempts to dissolve the evidence, literally. This is Evil Unmasked. Let's begin. John George Haigh was born on July 24, 1909, to parents Alfred and Emily in Stamford, Lincolnshire. Raised in the small village of Outwood, Yorkshire, John's upbringing was heavily influenced by his ultra-religious father, a colliery foreman and devout member of the Plymouth Brethren. This Christian sect was known for its strict adherence to conservative and anti-modern beliefs, which profoundly shaped John's early life. His father, Alfred, was particularly stringent to the extent that he constructed a 10-foot fence around their home. This barrier was not just physical, but symbolic, designed to lock out the outside world and prevent John from associating with peers who might introduce him to more progressive or secular ideas. John's childhood was one of isolation, dominated by a rigid environment where the outside world was viewed with suspicion and fear. John also suffered from anxiety and nightmares due to his ultra-religious childhood. His father would even tell him terrible stories, even making him believe that the blue scar on his forehead was the brand of Satan, warning his son that if he were to sin, he would have the same mark. John had a deep appreciation for classical music and a talent for playing the piano, which earned him a scholarship to Queen Elizabeth Grammar School and Wakefield Cathedral. Known for his odd sense of humor, John often found himself the target of bullying at school. Despite these challenges, he persevered academically until he left high school at the age of 17 to become an apprentice to a motor engineer. However, John's mischievous streak soon got the better of him. He lost his apprenticeship after a prank involving sugar in his boss's gas tank, a stunt that cost him his job and highlighted his struggle to fit into conventional roles in the workforce. Undeterred by this setback, John found solace in his personal life. On July 6, 1934, he married his girlfriend, Betty Hammer. Their marriage marked a new chapter for John, offering a glimpse of stability amid the turbulence of his early career. John ventured into the world of business with a less than honest enterprise, forging vehicle documents. This was short-lived, as he was soon caught and sentenced to 15 months at Leeds Assizes, a court, in November 1934. This legal trouble marked the beginning of a difficult period in John's life. While he served his sentence, the repercussions of his actions extended beyond the courtroom. His wife of just 4 months, Betty, decided to divorce him. The scandal and instability proved too much for her to bear, especially with a young child in the picture. She made the heart-wrenching decision to put their baby daughter up for adoption, severing ties with John completely. Upon his release, John sought to rebuild his life by starting a dry cleaning business with a partner. For a time, the venture proved successful, offering him a bit of stability and a fresh start. However, this period of prosperity was abruptly cut short when his business partner tragically died in a car accident. The loss led to the collapse of the business, leaving John once again at a crossroads. Determined to move forward and find new opportunities, John decided to leave his past behind and relocate to London in 1936. Upon arriving in London, John secured a job as a chauffeur for the affluent McSwan family, who owned a popular amusement park. This position not only provided him with a stable income, but also allowed him to mingle with the upper members of society, offering a glimpse into the world of wealth and privilege. However, John's ambitions extended beyond merely serving the McSwans. Under the alias of William Adamson, John began posing as a solicitor, a fraudulent guise that enabled him to engage in more illicit activities. He devised a scheme to sell counterfeit stock shares from the estates of deceased clients at below market rates. His charm and persuasive skills allowed him to deceive unsuspecting investors, further entrenching himself in a life of crime. Despite the initial success of his fraudulent endeavors, John's luck eventually ran out. His scheme unraveled, and he was apprehended by the authorities. In a subsequent trial, he was found guilty and sentenced to 4 years of penal servitude. During his 4-year sentence, John had ample time to reflect on his criminal missteps and strategize for the future. He came to a realization. His primary downfall had been allowing his fraud victims to live, thereby giving them the opportunity to report his crimes and ensure his capture. This insight led him to a disturbing conclusion. When he would continue his criminal activities upon release, he would need to eliminate any witnesses who could expose him. Determined to perfect his methods, John began to devise a plan for disposing of his victims. He thought of various ways to ensure that no trace of his crimes would be left behind. It is speculated that during this period of introspection, he delved into the history of notorious criminals. One figure that particularly intrigued him was the French murderer Georges Alexandre Surratt, known for dissolving his victims in sulfuric acid. This gruesome method captivated John's imagination, and he began to consider it as a potential solution for his own future crimes. John's time in prison thus became a dark period of both punishment and preparation. He meticulously planned every detail, determined that his next criminal endeavors would be foolproof. The idea of using sulfuric acid to dispose of bodies was both practical and sinister, as it would leave no evidence behind and make it nearly impossible for authorities to trace his actions. As the end of his sentence approached, John emerged from prison not only more determined, but also armed with a new horrifying strategy. The lessons learned and the plans conceived during those 4 years would lay the groundwork for the even more heinous acts that he would commit in the years to come. His imprisonment had not rehabilitated him, but rather refined his criminal acumen, setting the stage for a chilling and notorious chapter in his life. Upon his release, John secured a job as a salesman for an accounting firm in Crawley, a position he held until 1944. This phase of his life appeared outwardly stable and unremarkable, though it belied the dark intentions brewing beneath the surface. In the summer of 1944, John would run into William Donald McSwan, whom he had originally met in 1936 while working as a chauffeur for the McSwan family. Their reunion was a significant moment that would set the stage for John's next steps into crime. William, now a landlord, shared with John details about his current occupation. He collected rent from tenants residing in his parents' multiple properties, a lucrative and relatively easy source of income. As John listened to William's description of his life as a landlord, he envisioned a way to leverage William's position for his gain, knowing full well that eliminating witnesses had become a crucial part of his strategy. William invited John to reconnect with his parents, and during their visit, the conversation naturally turned to their recent property investments. This opportunity allowed John to gather more information about the McSwan family's financial dealings and the extent of their wealth. Over the following weeks, John spent more time with William, subtly integrating himself further into the McSwan family's trust. On September 9th, 1944, John and William went out for a drink at the Goat on Kensington High Street. After sharing a few drinks, John suggested they head over to his workshop at 79 Gloucester Road. Upon their arrival at the workshop, John brutally smashed William's skull, killing him. He then placed William's body into a 40-gallon drum and filled it with concentrated sulfuric acid. Over the next 2 days, the acid did its gruesome work, reducing William's remains to 100 pounds of sludge. John disposed of the gruesome remains by pouring the sludge down a manhole. This act of disposal left no trace of William Donald McSwan, marking the chilling success of John's carefully orchestrated crime. John came up with a story to explain William's sudden disappearance, telling William and Amy McSwan that their son had fled to Scotland to avoid being drafted into the military. To lend credibility to his tale, he even forged letters seemingly from William. For a time, the McSwans believed John's story, reassured by the false correspondence from their son. However, as months passed and the draft ended with no sign of William, the McSwans grew increasingly suspicious. Sensing their doubt, John decided to eliminate this threat to his freedom. In July of 1945, he lured William and Amy to his workshop under the pretense that their son was waiting for them. Once there, he brutally beat them to death, following the same method he had used on their son, and placing their bodies in 40-gallon drums and dissolving them in concentrated sulfuric acid. With the McSwans' bodies reduced to sludge and disposed of, John took the next step in his plan. Posing as William McSwan, he obtained legal control of the McSwan family's assets. He sold everything, netting himself a sum of $10,000. However, his newfound wealth quickly dwindled due to his voracious gambling habit. Realizing that he needed more money to sustain his lifestyle, John understood that his criminal activities were far from over. The murder of the McSwans had not only lined his pockets, but also set a dangerous precedent, paving the way for further crimes driven by greed, a ruthless desire for financial gain, and the belief that he would never be caught. In 1947, John met Dr. Archibald Henderson and his wife, Rose, who were selling a property. Feigning genuine interest, John made friends with the couple by bonding over their shared love for music. This allowed him to gain Dr. Henderson's trust, leading to the revelation of sensitive details about their property holdings. Simultaneously, John took steps to set up a new base of operations. He rented a discreet warehouse space in Crawley, London, where he relocated his equipment and supplies. To ensure that he was fully prepared, John ordered 3 carboys of sulfuric acid in 2 40-gallon drums, signaling his readiness to continue his criminal activities. In February 1948, John invited Dr. Archibald Henderson and his wife, Rose, to his new workshop in Crawley, claiming he wanted to show them a groundbreaking invention. Trusting his intentions, the couple arrived at the location, only to be met with an unfortunate fate. Once inside, John shot Dr. Henderson in the head and immediately followed with a fatal shot to Rose. After committing the murders, John disposed of their bodies in 40-gallon drums, again dissolving them with sulfuric acid. To maintain the facade that the Hendersons were still alive, John went to great lengths, even forging a letter supposedly from Rose addressed to her brother. With the Hendersons out of the way, John quickly sold their properties and possessions, turning their assets into quick cash. His actions not only demonstrated his ruthless efficiency, but also his ability to manipulate and deceive, ensuring that his heinous crimes remained hidden while he profited from his victims' lives. By February 1949, John had been residing at the Onslow Court Hotel in South Kensington for 4 years. Among his fellow residents was 69-year-old Miss Olive Henrietta Olivia Roberts Durand Deacon, a widow who had lived at the hotel for over 6 years. John and Miss Durand Deacon had exchanged occasional pleasantries and brief conversations during their time at the hotel. He had presented himself as an engineer and inventor, a facade that allowed him to cultivate an air of credibility. On February 14th, Miss Durand Deacon approached John with an intriguing proposition. She had shared with him a design for false fingernails she had created and sought his expertise to enhance the concept. Eager to patent the idea, she hoped to capitalize on the post-war desire for glamour among women. John expressed a keen interest, promising to consider the improvement of her design. On the 18th, John arranged to visit the warehouse with Miss Durand Deacon under the guise of discussing her fingernail design. Once there, he shot her in the back of the head, then removed her jewelry and fur coat. He placed her lifeless body into a 45-gallon drum, which he filled with sulfuric acid. John then returned to his hotel and indulged in a 3-course meal. The following morning, Saturday the 19th, concern grew among the hotel guests when Miss Durand Deacon failed to appear for breakfast. The other residents inquired about her whereabouts, and John informed them that they had planned a meeting, but she had not shown up. By Sunday, the growing unease among the guests was palpable. Miss Lane, particularly concerned, confronted John and mentioned her intention to report Miss Durand Deacon's absence to the police that afternoon. John, eager to maintain appearances, offered to drive her to the Chelsea police station. At the station, John's demeanor quickly raised red flags. Sergeant Lambourne, a seasoned policewoman, found John's behavior and responses suspicious. Her keen instincts set the stage for an investigation that would soon uncover the truth behind Miss Durand Deacon's disappearance and John's sinister activities. On Monday, Scotland Yard's record office was contacted, and John's extensive criminal history was soon uncovered. That morning, John had made a trip to Crawley, where he disposed of the sludge from the drum by pouring it out onto the ground outside his workshop. Afterward, he went to have Miss Durand Deacon's jewelry appraised, trying to get cash for his assets. By the time he returned to his hotel, the police were already waiting for him. Despite the mounting evidence against him, John maintained his story, insisting that Miss Durand Deacon had simply missed their appointment. He provided a statement to the authorities, sticking to his narrative in an attempt to deflect suspicion and buy himself more time. On Thursday, the police requested another statement from John, but his response was largely a reiteration of his initial account. By Saturday, February 26th, the authorities had decided to inspect his workshop in Crawley. During their search, they discovered several incriminating items: a rubber apron and a gas mask, both suggesting preparation for hazardous activities, as well as empty carboys indicative of recent chemical use. Most notably, they found a 38 Enfield revolver that appeared to have been recently fired, and a dry cleaning receipt for a black Persian lamb coat. These findings deepened their suspicions and pointed to John's involvement in criminal activities. At 4:15 p.m. on Monday, February 28th, Detective Albert Webb awaited John's return to Onslow Court. When John arrived, he was promptly taken to Chelsea Police Station. During questioning, John made a startling confession, stating, quote, "I've destroyed her with acid. You'll find the sludge that remains at Leopold Road. Every trace is gone. How can you prove murder if there's no body?" End quote. He further implicated himself in the murders of the McSwans and the Hendersons, shockingly claiming that he had killed them to drink their blood. On Tuesday, March 1st, Home Office pathologist Dr. Keith Simpson conducted a thorough examination of the Crawley workshop. He discovered bloodstains on the walls and a hat pin at the bottom of one of the drums, crucial evidence linking John to the crimes. Dr. Simpson also found a gallstone embedded in the sludge left in the yard. All of these residues were collected and sent to the police lab for detailed analysis. The forensic examination revealed a chilling array of evidence: 28 pounds of animal fat, a human foot, 2 additional gallstones, and a full set of dentures. The dentures were identified as belonging to Mrs. Durand Deacon, having been confirmed by her dentist. This forensic breakthrough provided irrefutable evidence of the murders and solidified the case against John. He was formally charged with the murder of Mrs. Durand Deacon on March 2nd and was subsequently transferred to Lewis Prison. The media soon dubbed him the Acid Bath Murderer due to his gruesome methods. His trial commenced on July 18, 1949, and concluded the following day. During the proceedings, John pleaded insanity, asserting that drinking his victim's blood had driven him to madness. He contended that his primary motive for the murders was the compulsion to drink the blood of his victims, alleging that he would cut a small incision in their necks and collect a glass or two of blood. However, there was no evidence to support his claim of consuming human blood. Despite his defense, psychiatrists testified that John was sane at the time of the murders. The jury took only 17 minutes to deliberate before delivering a guilty verdict. On August 10, 1949, John was executed by hanging at Wandsworth Prison, with Albert Pierpoint carrying out the sentence. In a peculiar twist, Madame Tussaud visited John's cell that afternoon, spending 3 hours crafting a lifelike mask for a wax model that would be displayed the following day. The model was dressed in the very clothes that John had selected and donated himself. Today, this piece of history is part of the exhibition at the Museum of London, where visitors can view the chilling wax figure alongside artifacts from one of the most notorious cases of the 20th century. Remarkably, John had maintained a relationship with a girlfriend for 5 years while committing his heinous crimes. Barbara Steffens was deeply involved with John and had envisioned a future with him, completely unaware of the dark secrets lurking behind his facade. Her life with John was marked by trust and love, making the revelation of his monstrous acts all the more shocking and devastating for her. Thank you for joining us for this chilling episode of Evil Unmasked. Today we dove into the haunting story of John George Haigh, a truly twisted individual. If you found this episode compelling, be sure to subscribe and leave a review to help others discover my podcast. For more updates and behind-the-scenes content, follow me on Instagram at evil.unmasked or on X at evil_unmasked. If you have any case suggestions or stories you would like to hear, please visit me at evilunmasked.com. Join us next week as we explore another gripping true crime tale. Until then, stay safe and keep questioning the world around you. This is Sierra Elizabeth, signing off. If you found this episode compelling, be sure to subscribe and leave a review to help others discover my podcast. For more updates and behind-the-scenes content, follow me on Instagram at evil.unmasked or on X at evil_unmasked. If you have any case suggestions or stories you would like to hear, please visit me at evilunmasked.com. Join us next week as we explore another gripping true crime tale. Until then, stay safe and keep questioning the world around you. This is Sierra Elizabeth, signing off.